Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to compile a list of the most important people on the planet, Enlightened Centrists. Now, as an Enlightened Centrist myself, I'm very aware of the degree to which this term has been used as a slur against me and my people, me and my stock. And make no mistake, I am taking back the power of that patronizing Enlightened Centrist term and appropriating it for universal peace, power, and balance throughout the universe and security to my new empire. Now, some of you, I can already hear, Paul, this video is going to suck because some of the people on the thumbnail don't even identify as centrists. Okay, I'm sure Prince Andrew doesn't identify as an accessory to child trafficking, but a rose by any other name smells just as sweet. But let's be fair, what defines an enlightened centrist, right? Well, much like other forms of mental illness, an enlightened centrist is someone who meets a number of criteria. Those criteria being, do I, Paul, P.F. Jung, personally and subjectively agree with you and generally vibe with you and like what you have to say. That's pretty much it. Although maybe a better metric is, do all of the cringy, pathetic, basement-dwelling dweebs on the far left and far right dislike you? As the archetypal older brother and fashion consultant for this episode, Joey Swoll puts it, I guess when both sides are offended by your message, you're doing something right. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have our first enlightened centrist on the tier list, Joey Swoll, for going after both sides and going to the gym, the two most important qualities of any enlightened centrist. Now, just to be clear here, we've got 5 tiers. Because I'm an adult, we're going to have a nice normal distribution here. So most people will be at B, some people will be at D. But remember, even a D tier enlightened centrist is going to be better than 99.99% of the population. So if you're on this list, you made it. All right? You made it. Next, we have Jordan B. Peterson, pre-coma, original lectures, straight to the top for providing the metaphysical foundation of order and chaos, the duality of man, the value of the left and the value of the right. Brilliant, genius, wonderful stuff. One of the most phenomenal centrist philosophers, only to be beat by his arch nemesis himself, Jordan Peterson, post-coma, arguably the greatest disappointment in the history of man. D tier, absolutely. We're setting the parameters. You know, some of his podcasts are fine and all that, but like, my God, his increased presence on Twitter is literally mental cancer. Next, we got Abba and Preach. Abba and Preach are B tier. Solid social commentary. I generally like what they have to say. They're not uber political, which keeps them at B tier, which is totally fine. You need to speak to the average person.
It is a sickness!
Next is Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a C tier. Obviously, single most influential figure in the modern time era, I would say. A little bit transhuman from my perspective. Neuralink going through clinical trials. I'm not sure how I feel about a computer touching my brain and then creating hell on Earth by slowing down time into an actual simulation. I think it's just a bad thing overall. So, C tier, helping fight climate change, all that good shit. Joe Rogan, solid B tier. Most influential person willing to have a conversation with anyone. Ask good questions. By his own admission, he's dumb, asks good questions in order to, make up for that. He's a bit of a chameleon, though. He just kind of adapts to whatever guest he's talking to and pretends like if he's talking to a left-wing person, like, oh yeah, the right's so stupid. If he's talking to a right-wing person, oh yeah, the left is so crazy. It's just like, have a goddamn spine, Joseph. Next is Brett Weinstein and Heather Hine. Solid power couple. Very solidly grounded in evolutionary theory, which is a deliciously centrist philosophy / theory, because the only people that hate evolution more than the religious zealots on the right are the pseudo-religious social constructionists on the left. So good for them. Next is Russell Brand, A tier. A tier for being classically charismatic, an orator of limited comparison, generally a great guy, goes after the World Economic Forum plenty, which is just glorious enlightened centrist behavior, and he's a recovering addict, so he overcomes his demons, which makes him a good person, and good person equals enlightened centrist as far as I'm concerned. Which leads us to Destiny, unfortunately. Destiny, this has been a hard one. He could really go in a number of places, but we're going to put him at C tier, and the reason is he is pure cold rationality, which will, always lead you to the truth, which is, of course, deeply enlightened. But, he unironically does change my mind videos about how the woke have gone too far. So to say he's a leftist is just nonsense. But he stays at C because he slandered centrists to Lex Fridman's face.
One is because I think a lot of people that market themselves as center are legitimately spineless cowards. and deserve to be called out.
Which was just such a disappointment. But, you know, an understandable one. No true centrist would identify as centrist, obviously. Next, we have Dave Chapelle. Borderline S tier, but we're going to keep him at A tier. Goes after far left, obviously. You know, almost canceled for making transgender jokes. No one remembers that in the same special he made transgender jokes. He also talked about shooting heroin-addicted white people.
Hang in there, whites. Just say no. What's so hard about that?
Which, you know, seems like a major political, social issue as much as trans issues, but no one went after him for that. But the point is, he goes against both sides, which is great, okay? It puts you in the right perspective. And he's a truth teller, and he's all around funny, charismatic guy, a true centrist. Blair White, B tier, B tier, B tier. She would be A tier, but she is, of course, a woman. Just kidding. We make jokes. This is a comedy channel. Overall, just common sense perspectives, and I think really puts up a fight against the religious right dogmatism that all trans people are, you know, these evil people and all that. And glad she exists, and glad she is speaking truth to power. So, B tier, solid. Benjamin Boyce, B. Good conversations, has a lot of interesting guests. He's kind of got this monotone, smooth voice, which is like cool, but I think it limits him. I think he's a bit plateaued to some degree, so we'll keep him at B. Then we have Ryan Chapman. Ryan Chapman is the low-key GOAT, one of my favorite YouTube channels currently. Deep, intellectual, objective dives into the literature, into topics that are relevant, critical race theory, Marxism, all that stuff. Highly recommend Ryan Chapman. Solid A tier. Little bit missing some emotion and charisma, but hey, what white male isn't? Speaking of white males, Coleman Hughes. We'll put him at C tier. Now, he would be B tier or A tier, but he just talks like a robot in every podcast, and he's such a solid thinker and also rapper too. And he's definitely got all that, you know, emotion and humanity in him, but it just doesn't come out. So that, you know, we're keeping him at C. Again, C tier, still phenomenal if you're on this list at all. So excellent. Dave Rubin, otherwise known as the Nickelback of centrism, has to go in D tier. He's got good guests, like I guess, but like I believe he's a bit of a grifter from my understanding, and he's kind of not that funny, and he was a comedian to start off with, and then just kind of ended up in politics, and he's got a lot of Jeb Bush energy with the please clap stuff, so.
I'm actually quite proud to stand in front of you and tell you that I'm a conservative. I have no problem doing that whatsoever. That you can applaud for. That I thought that was going to be a big...
Not the best look, but we'll keep him on the D tier list, along with Up Yours Woke Moralist Jordan Peterson.
Incoming transmission.
Conscript report moving out. Ready, cop.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
Instruction complete.
Eric Weinstein, B tier, solid thinker, a steel manner of Marxism. His whole theory of the embedded growth obligation, very sophisticated, very useful for developing a comprehensive economic understanding of the current political predicament we find ourselves in, thus making him a solid centrist thinker. Problem is he talks about physics and quantum physics and rulers and protractors, and I don't understand any of it, and it's too complicated, so that keeps him at B tier, unfortunately, for him. Gad Saad, B tier. Gad Saad wrote a great book, Parasitic Mind. One of the key things that he pointed out is that there are certain ideas that are not worth engaging in an intellectual or Socratic manner. Some ideas are worth just being told to off, and that's been helpful in my thinking and my approach to the world. Do not dignify a terrible idea with a discussion if it really is a terrible idea, and Gad Saad's a man for that. ShortFatOtaku, solid B tier. Very relevant, very meme online relevant video essay type things, which really helps cement complex topics and abstractions into a digestible format for those of us who spend a unhealthy disproportionate amount of our time online. Only thing holding him back from going higher is he's a little weeby, right? And as someone who looks like Joey Swoll, not actually, I feel like I have to make fun of weebs. So this is really just insecurity on my part, making fun of weebs. But, you know, the Enlightened Centrist recognizes one's own insecurities and, I don't know, whatever. Geoffrey Miller, B tier. Geoffrey Miller, Primal Poly on Twitter, is on here solely because he's, I think, the best follow on Twitter that I currently have. Evolutionary biologist, great stuff, very measured. Virtually every reply to every tweet I see that he's on is golden. So if you're not following Primal Poly on Twitter, I highly recommend it. Next, we have Jonathan Haidt, Also a solid B tier. Moral Foundations theory is excellent, lays the philosophical groundwork for comparing the value of the left and right. Very, very enlightened, very centrist perspective. And his work on disgust theory has been extremely important and influential in the world of understanding what the hell is going on. So we'll keep him at B tier. Sitch and Adam, ooh. S-Class would put him here, A-Team would put him here, but we're going to put them at B tier. Again, B tier, very solid. Sitch and Adam, solid show. Great blend of intellect and comedy. Only thing holding them back is their absolute lack of faith in me being able to convert Vosh into a fellow centrist. I am truly the centrist, the unifier, where I can reach out to someone whose heart is as hard as Vosh's and bring him back into the fold.
Oh my
Right?
God.
He's delusional. Only time will tell, but for now, we'll keep him at B tier. Next is James Lindsay. James Lindsay, we put him at C tier. And the reason is great intellectual deep dives into the origins of wokeness and all that nonsense, right? And really lays it out in a clear manner. Problem is he's a little catastrophizing. He talks about we're literally in the midst of a communist takeover. And it's like, well, ideologically, you might have a point, but when you use that terminology, it just sounds alarmist because we're not literally at the worst points of the Cultural Revolution. We're at maybe the beginning of it, but you got to choose your words carefully because you got to think about what image does the words you use invoke in people's minds, and I think he's just a little bit too much. I'd rather go to Ryan Chapman for a deep dive into Marxism. But Lindsay does great work, so we'll keep him at C. Kidology, recent new up-and-comer on the YouTube centrist scene. I really like her. I think she makes heartfelt videos. She's very authentic, which I think is a key deciding factor in the quality of one's videos, one's communication to other people. Are you bringing your real self? Are you highlighting the motivations for why you're talking about the ideas you talk about? Very important. She's great. So solid B tier. I like her in general. Killer Mike. This is a bit of maybe a controversial one. A lot of people think Killer Mike's very left-wing, but my God, if you've seen his comments on getting people to read various intellectual authors, they are incredible.
I want you to go home tonight. I want you to listen to Thomas Sowell. I want you to listen to, hold on, I got you coming. You look, my nigga. All right.
Yes.
So,
Right there.
I want you to listen to Walter E. Williams. I want you to listen to the economic strategy of Elijah Muhammad and Marcus Garvey. I want you to listen to the political strategy of Stokely Carmichael. I need you to get on your study and prove yourself worthy shit because I'm tired of arguing who got the best master.
That is Enlightened Centrism in its purest, raw, emotional, powerful form. The Killer Mike's a solid A tier. Sam Harris, ooh, D tier. Solid thinker, but went very hard on the anti-Trump weirdo stuff. Very cringy. Also complained to Lex Fridman about platforming Kanye West, which is like, what are you in favor of censorship? Do you think that you, because you're smart, are capable of handling conversations that other people aren't? It's like, let the reality of people's viewpoints be as it is and trust in the logos, the spirit of truth to separate the wheat from the chaff. And Sam Harris doesn't do that because he's a cringe new atheist, I like to say. But still on the list because, you know, his conversation with Jordan Peterson are among the most intellectually significant and interesting, in my opinion, conversations I've ever seen. Then we have Andrew Wilson from The Crucible, a P.F. Young orbiter. Despite his unbelievably disgusting and pathetic views as it relates to gay marriage and all this nonsense stuff that he's very far right on. He does show a great degree of respect to people he engages with, which is just a very sophisticated, balanced, centrist way of doing things. So he's on the list, but certainly D tier. Lex Fridman, solid B tier. Basically Joe Rogan, except a lot more intellectual in terms of his guests. He's a little bit naive, though. He has this whole, like, I believe everyone is fundamentally good and love is the most powerful thing. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but psychopaths and people who want to normalize the relationships that adults have with children, let's say. So that caps him a little bit, just a little bit. But overall, great guy. The All In Podcast, Jason Calacanis, Chamath Palihapitiya, David Sachs, and David Friedberg. This is my business podcast go-to. So if you're interested in understanding anything about like interest rates and the economy, I highly recommend the All In Podcast. Very solid takes, except for some questionable, weird ones by Chamath. But
yeah, nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs. Okay, you bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care.
The rest of us don't care.
Very level-headed across the board and entertaining and accessible for a lot of people, so highly recommend. And we have Glenn Loury. Glenn Loury, absolute G, the archetypal godfather. Very sophisticated, very wise, and knows how to articulate with emotion, which a lot of centrists seem to lack greatly. So earns him a nice spot on the A-tier list. Bill Maher, kind of a boomer, definitely a boomer. A lot of boomer jokes, but he goes after the far left and far right. He's again got a little bit of Trump derangement syndrome. Not that Trump isn't worth criticizing, but it's a little bit much, and also his jokes are just kind of lame sometimes. So we'll keep him at C. But overall, he's on the right track, and I think he speaks to a lot of the older, wiser, more experienced audience. So we'll keep him at C. John McWhorter, he could be B or C. Let's put him at C to keep this nice normal distribution going. He's very smart, more or less a pretty liberal, pretty left. I think he said Jordan Peterson was like alt-right or something like that, which, a little bit out of touch, but we all make mistakes. But I do like him, and I think he speaks a lot to the liberal bubble elite in a very common sense centrist way, and he talks about religion being he talks about wokeness being religion, which is a very accurate description. So we'll keep him on C. He's solid. Okay, this is my dark horse pick. CJ the X, I believe the only other S tier on the list. CJ the X, I think, is my favorite YouTube channel. This man is among the most sophisticated purveyors of information, and he draws upon the same philosophical, archetypal ideas that Jordan Peterson draws on, that Brett Weinstein talks about in a different light, but CJ the X, brilliant combination of intelligence, charisma, and rhetoric. I cannot recommend people watch him enough, and he speaks to a very left-wing audience, I think, which brings that much more objective, archetypal messaging to a crowd that is maybe susceptible to everything is just power and everything is subjective. It's like, maybe not. Check out his subjectivity in art video to see what I'm talking about, but absolute G. NotSoErudite. NotSoErudite, solid B tier. She actually made a very compelling theological / hermeneutic argument for why the right-wing dogma about being against gay people and gay marriage is actually the result of a mistranslation in the Bible, and I've yet to hear a response to it. So very sophisticated as far as I'm concerned. Only thing that holds her back is I think she still believes that non-binary people can exist as separate from regular people, when the reality is everyone's non-binary, therefore no one is non-binary, because if there's some non-binary people and some non-binary people, that creates a binary. So once she drops that, she'll rise to the level of Joey Swoll and crew. Matt Christensen, actual justice warrior, and NuanceBro. Honestly, these guys are all the same to me in terms of just how they talk and what they talk about. I probably agree with them on like 95% of what they say, but it's just very dry in my opinion, and I kind of can predict what they're going to say. So as long as they're doing good journalism, that's fair, and bringing new important information to light. But, I think they could work on their charisma. I don't know. Who knows? Peter Boghossian, solid B tier. The grievance studies hoax, phenomenal, going after the left-wing institutional nonsense, is always solid, always appreciated, and his street epistemology videos are great. So Boghossian, solid B. Daniel Schmachtenberger, the absolute, I would say, superlative, most behind-the-scenes capable centrist there is, does a lot of intellectual work that is just off the charts, and I think he's in contact with a lot of important institutions and making differences behind the scenes. Talks about a third attractor, very centrist sounding. I highly recommend the Schmachtenberger, and I believe it's Tristan Harris, Joe Rogan episode about social media, or his conversation with Eric Weinstein. Phenomenal. Schmachtenberger, low-key, solid thinker. ShoeOnHead, queen of the centrist, was a Bernie bro, then became the investigative journalist calling out weird shit with Balenciaga. Absolute A-tier, glorious centrist. I don't see how anyone can dispute that unless you're Big Joel, which doesn't really matter. Trigonometry, we'll put him at B tier. I really like these guys, but then they had like a struggle session thing with, what's her name? Jess Pearly, I believe, about her conversation with Nick, and they were like, well, but he's a racist, so why didn't you talk about that? It's like, well, okay, it's called conversation. You don't understand what you're doing. But anyway, they've done a lot of good, and they had great conversations, so we'll keep him at B. Slavoj Zizek. Slavoj Zizek's a Marxist. He's a hate centrist, blah, blah, blah. Listen, Slavoj Zizek wrote an article about the woke industrial complex and woke capitalism pushing puberty blockers in children. And it was a scathing article that a lot of conservatives and people in the middle are too afraid to speak up about, and Slavoj Zizek did it anyway, which is why he's on this list, even though he's a raging Marxist. We'll put him at that D, because I'm sure any higher than that would be an insult, and because he just, Marxist and centrist. There's some overlap there, because Marx definitely did have some good ideas, but it is what it is. And lastly, we have Jreg.
Great stuff. I clicked one of your videos, and then I watched some of your other videos, and I thought to myself, this guy is just like me for real. He's my new literally me character.
I don't need to explain myself for what I'm about to do. I think that covers it. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Enlightened Centrist tier list. Look at that solid, normal distribution. Hopefully this has been informative. Hopefully this guides you, shows you the truth to balance and prosperity for all the world. And if not, do some yoga or something. Bring balance back to your soul. I don't know. Anyway, good luck and Godspeed.